We're a nation of dog lovers. Take this village in the middle of England. It's home to 1,500 people and over 120 dogs. Big dogs, small dogs, hairy dogs, speedy dogs. The dog is one of the most varied species on Earth. But how did one wild wolf species become the tame companion we all know and love with all this dazzling diversity?
To find out, we're putting these dogs through their paces. We'll investigate how the breeds compare and reveal what makes each one unique.
We'll find out what makes the greyhound the fastest breed of all.
From coming out of the trap up to the first bend, they're reaching nearly 40 miles per hour.
Reveal what makes these dogs such good swimmers.
Oh yes, you can really see that pulsing through the water.
Uncover why some dogs are so hairy and others hairless.
The origin of the hairless dog may have been just to make them a bit more oven-ready.
And historian Ruth Goodman will unearth the extraordinary stories behind some of the world's most iconic breeds.
This is one of your ancestors, look.
She's not interested in family history, I don't think. We're celebrating the dog in all its spectacular and unlikely forms. Welcome to the wonder of dogs. In Brightwell, in Oxfordshire, we're carrying out a unique investigation into man's best friend. We've invited all the local dogs. We've got Labradors, Labradoodles, Pugs, Chihuahuas, Mastiffs, Collies, Spaniels, plus some very special guests, like this wonderful Commodore behind me. And down here, I've got my three very excited dogs. This is Teg and Badger and Bella.
In our big marquee over there, we're conducting a census of the village dogs. Recording their every feature, from the pads on their paws to the colour of their coats. In our anatomy tent, we're going to explore that ingenious physiology hidden under all that fur. And in here, we're delving into doggy DNA.
We want to find out if there's something unique inside every domestic dog that allows them to come in so many shapes and sizes, and to reveal the surprising pedigrees of some of Brightwell's dogs.
Throughout the show, we'll be uncovering how such extreme differences between dogs came about. Our first question: why are some dogs so much bigger than others?
What's really obvious watching these dogs racing back and forth is the sheer variety in size. And that's not surprising because domestic dogs display the biggest size range of any terrestrial mammal, living or extinct.
Dogs vary from 10 centimetres high to more than a metre. In human terms, that's the equivalent of having a person a metre tall alongside a 10-metre giant.
I'd like you to meet Boris here, who is one of the extreme ends of the dogs in the village in terms of size. Look at him, he's enormous. He's a Mastiff. And to give you a sense of the other end of the scale, I'm going to show you Dudley. Now, these two know each other. In fact, they are friends. They met at the local vet surgery, and the receptionist there thought it was so bizarre that they played together. She took a photo, and actually it made it onto the front of the local paper. I've got Boris's own Chris here.
Hello.
Now, what made you pick Boris? I take it you thought long and hard about letting a dinosaur into your house?
Well, we've had Mastiffs before, so we kind of knew what we were in for. And apart from the fact that he takes up a whole settee to himself in the evening when we sit down and watch the telly, it's just like having any other dog, really, just bigger.
But, Helen, you wanted something very different. What made you pick Dudley? Because he is absolutely tiny.
We sat for a neighbour's puppy, Chihuahua puppy, and they're just such huge characters that we decided to get one.
Well, hopefully we can get some lovely photos taken. I think the most incredible aspect of both of these dogs is they are, believe it or not, the same species. If you want to see how that is possible, you have to get it under the skin and take a look at the bones, which we have over here. Now, this is a Chihuahua skeleton, and look how tiny that is, especially when you put it next to a bigger dog. Now, unfortunately, this isn't a Mastiff, this is a Greyhound. And if you look at them, they do look wildly different. But when you focus in on the bones, there aren't any more in the Greyhound. They're just a different size and shape, resulting in two completely different-looking animals.
All dogs have 301 bones in their bodies. It's just the additional number of tailbones that varies.
Now, archaeologists have found bones of big and small dogs in ancient human settlements, highlighting the fact that we've been living with dogs of varying sizes across hundreds and thousands of years. And this is reflected well in the village today, from 100 kilos of Boris at one end all the way down to Dudley here, who weighs less than a kilo. Now, you may think that the Chihuahua is a recent invention, bred purely for fashion, but they've got a surprisingly long and intriguing history.
Ruth Goodman is at the British Museum to uncover the big story behind the world's smallest breed.
As an historian and a dog lover, I've always been fascinated by the way that people and dogs seem to have evolved together. In fact, if you start looking at that relationship throughout history, what you're really studying is us. I've come to see how Rhea, as a Chihuahua, is absolutely a perfect example of this relationship.
Scientists have found a DNA connection between modern Chihuahuas and ancient Mexican dogs that lived 1,000 years ago. Dr. Elizabeth Bacadano has seen these small dogs depicted by several lost civilizations.
Dogs were really essential companions of the Mexicans. The Aztecs represented them, the Toltecs, the Mayas, the Mixtecs.
This lady, she's got a little tiny dog holding it just like I am. I have to say, it brings to mind Paris Hilton and handbags. But there's a more serious side to dogs in society.
Absolutely. When somebody died, dogs were placed in burials. They were placed together with the deceased. They helped the deceased make the journey of afterlife.
It seems that ancient Mexicans believed that if they were buried with their dogs, they'd have a spiritual companion in the afterlife. What intrigues me is why they're so small.
They're all so tiny, aren't they?
Absolutely. Mexican dogs were always small, a bit like this Chihuahua.
But why? We don't know exactly. But it could be that smaller dogs were useful hunters in dense jungle, or that they were simply easier to fatten up for eating. What's most likely is that one unusually small dog appeared in a litter of puppies, and the ancient Mexicans liked it so much they bred thousands from that one line. But when the Spanish invaded Mexico, it seemed the miniature Mexican breed's days were numbered.
Big dogs, fighting dogs, were introduced by the Spaniards in the 16th century.
That must have been quite a shock, really. I mean, if the only dogs you'd ever known were tiny little things that you could carry on your shoulder, you get this huge, great Mastiff with big jaws and big teeth.
Oh, yes. Well, you know, the Mexicans, the Mesoamerican people, weren't aware that dogs like this ever existed. It was very frightening to see dogs fighting, killing people.
Don't worry, you're much more cute than a Mastiff. You are.
But the small Mexican dog survived.
In the late 19th century, Americans visiting North Mexico spotted this tiny native breed and named it after the region where it was found, Chihuahua. Within decades, this miniature pooch became a fashion accessory and a true global icon.
The Chihuahua's baby face may have allowed it to conquer the world, but most of the small dogs here in Brightwell were bred to work for a living. To find out more about these feisty little dogs, I'm meeting local dog trainer Jenny Fairweather.
Tell me about what's going on here this afternoon.
Well, we've got an agility course, which would be a typical one at any competition.
We've got this little dog, wow, going like a rocket behind us here. What is the advantage of having a small dog? Why were these small breeds developed?
Most of these were vermin exterminators.
Right, so they wanted dogs that could get into little spaces and be quick and agile on their feet.
Yeah, and be able to turn in a space, so if they went down a fox's burrow, they need to be able to turn on themselves to be able to escape if they decided the fox was too vicious, or the badger.
The perfect example of an underground hunting breed is the Dachshund, which means badger dog in German. Their short legs and spade-like paws make them perfectly adapted to burrowing into tunnels. And it's thought that sturdy tail helped hunters pull them out if they got into a tight spot with a badger. As we bred for small, nimble dogs, we were selecting for genes with big impact. Amazingly, just one gene is responsible for short legs, and a dog's body size is largely down to another single gene. In a human, these features are influenced by hundreds of genes.
But when you look at these little dogs scurrying over the agility course, do they move differently from big dogs, or does leg length actually make no difference at all?
I could watch these dogs all day. It's such a lovely, fluid motion as they zoom across. The reason it looks so fluid is because dogs don't have a collarbone like humans, fixing their shoulder in place, so their whole shoulder blade moves fluidly up and down across their thorax, making their run look almost effortless. Now, the other thing they have to contend with is 4 legs. Coordinating those legs so you don't trip up means they have to have a very specific gait.
When dogs are walking or trotting, there's always at least one front paw and one back paw on the ground, creating a front-back rhythm. When they start to run, their spine flexes and their back legs swing further forward. And the pattern changes to front, back. Big or small, nearly all dogs run with this same gait.
But there is one dog that does run in a different way. The greyhound.
Greyhound racing as we know it today actually began in the Elizabethan era with hare coursing, a sport that saw dogs chase a hare across open ground. The first dog to catch it was the winner. To find out how the sport and the dogs have transformed over the last 400 years, I've come to Sheffield to meet the former owner of this stadium, John Carter.
So how did we get from hare coursing to greyhound racing?
Now that is the great question. An inanimate hare conveyor was patented by Mr. Owen Patrick Smith in Oklahoma, of all places, and that changed the whole of greyhound racing and coursing. It was the lateral-thinking Americans who invented the idea of an oval circuit. The people could see the full circle, and it tested the greyhounds then more for their agility as well as their speed.
With the arrival of oval track stadiums, professional greyhound racing took off. By 1946, gate attendance reached more than 190 million across Britain. An entire industry was built on this dog's remarkable speed. But why is it so fast? Greyhounds are masters of what's called the double suspension gallop. They're airborne twice in every cycle. Their unusually flexible spines allow such a long stride that their back legs overtake their front legs. This powerful gait and long history of being bred for speed has made greyhounds the fastest dogs on the planet. Breeder Elaine Parker is enjoying a proud moment with her dog, who's just won a race.
Hello. Oh my goodness! Hello, you. She won. She did. I didn't really fancy her tonight, but she's pulled out all the stops. She's done brilliant. So we're all pleased.
You train an awful lot of dogs, don't you?
I do, yeah. About 80 race dogs and 20 puppies.
Oh, my goodness.
So
I find absolutely amazing that such a tiny, slender, delicate-looking dog can just this woomph of speed.
They're a marvellous animal, a marvellous machine. When you think, from coming out of the trap there up to the first bend, they're reaching up to speeds of nearly 40 miles per hour.
And I have to say, watching them run is very beautiful.
It is, it is.
And you're gorgeous, eh? I don't think I've ever stroked a champion before.
She wouldn't be quite a champion, but she's done the business tonight, that's for sure, yeah?
Right, so we've got Cookie, who's 9 months, Nutmeg, who's 4.5, and Tosca, who's 5.
From Chihuahuas to Great Danes.
Rose.
And everything in between.
That's a good girl.
This is Poppy. She's a Springer Spaniel.
This is Mash. This is Missy.
The dogs of Brightwell come in all shapes and sizes.
We call her Betty, and she's a pug. Yeah, you're a pug.
It's hard to believe that this diverse range of dogs all came from the same ancestor. How did we get from the wolf, a wild predator that could attack humans, to the tame companions that share our homes? Dr. Gregor Larson from Durham University has studied this remarkable transition.
You're an evolutionary biologist, which is quite a cool thing to be.
It's not bad.
And you've been charting this extraordinary journey from wolf to pet dog,
That's
to
right.
the domesticated dog. Let's start with what evidence there is that all our domestic dogs really are related to that one common ancestor.
It's the DNA.
Okay.
It's open and shut. There's
Right.
no question. People have speculated about other wild species, maybe coyotes, maybe wild dogs, these kinds of things from South Africa. It's all the wolf. It's the grey wolf, done deal.
It's quite a leap to go from this very wild, fearsome pack animal to something that will sit on your knee and watch television with you.
It's an amazing transition. The general school of thought is that it's at least about 15,000, maybe 16,000 years ago. What we think was happening was that there was a pack of wolves or several packs of wolves that were attracted to human camps, the waste products that we were producing. And these wolves that could take advantage of that human niche were the ones that put themselves on a track toward domestication.
But it is still a big leap from an animal that's taking advantage of a few waste products to an animal that we have been able to manipulate and train to serve our own purposes.
It is, but it's also a very long time frame.
Okay.
I mean, the first couple of 100 or 1,000 years, perhaps, where it was a very kind of romantic dance between the two species. And then very slowly, as they come closer and closer, then humans start deliberately selecting for traits. So maybe the most tame ones, or the ones that were the best at warning them when other things were around. And then once you start taking over their reproduction and you start deciding who survives and who doesn't, rather than the wild deciding that, that's when the domestication really kicks off. And we become true partners at that stage, and everything just goes from there.
At first by chance, then by choice, we created the wolf that doesn't bite. And over the next 15,000 years, dogs followed in our footsteps as we moved into new environments. There are clues to this shared journey within their anatomy, especially in their paws.
Give me a paw, give me a paw, give me a paw, give me a paw. Good boy. Kai here is an Alaskan Malamute, so was actually bred to exist in a very similar situation as the early wolves. So when we look at his foot, he's still got some of those classic wolf features, and the main one being, look at that hair between his toes. That's a fantastic insulator. He's got so much resistance to cold that he can stand on ice for hours and hours during the day without any risk of frostbite, which certainly I couldn't do. But if we think about other aspects of dogs' feet, one of the classic things that we'll see are obviously nails. And we've got Hetty here, who's our Beagle Cross. The anatomy of her front foot is very similar to my hand. She's got 4 digits at the front here, and she's even got a thumb, which is the dew claw. They use it to grasp hold of things. If you watch your dog with a toy or a bone, quite often you'll see that move. And claws are not only used just for running spikes, because that's what they use on most dogs. They're also in the terrier breeds, these little dogs here, they're very good excavators. And that's why terriers, when you look at their tiny wee feet, they've got enormously strong and very long, powerful claws, because they do use them for digging and making a mess of your garden, no doubt.
She does.
And finally, Dexter is a classic water-loving breed, which is the Labrador Retriever, a chocolate lab with big, beautiful feet. And obviously, when you've ever met a lab before, you'll notice they've all got massive feet. And if you look between his toes, you can see that classic web. Connects all of his toes together, and if you can imagine that under the water, spreading his feet out, using them as paddles, and that's why whenever you get a water-loving dog, they've got huge feet, like a Newfoundland as another example. So it's almost a bit like palm reading. You can look at the sort of the shape and size of the feet, the nails, the pads, how much hair's there, and you can understand where these dogs were bred to live and exist, whether that's in the Arctic, whether that's digging holes in your garden, or even in Oxfordshire swimming pools.
Dogs love to make a splash. But what is it that makes some dogs such great swimmers? Local veterinary hydrotherapist Emma Barnard encourages dogs to swim for exercise and recuperation. Although dogs like these don't need much encouragement.
It's very interesting seeing a dog like Treacle move in the water. She seems very comfortable here.
Absolutely, yeah. We tend to find that dogs will happily keep themselves fairly buoyant and afloat just using their front legs, and their back legs tend to be their driving force. So as they go to retrieve a toy, that's when they really engage their back legs.
Oh yes, you can really see that
absolutely.
Pouncing through the water. And is the tail a useful tool?
Yeah,
for
they
them
use that as a rudder, so for helping him steer and manoeuvre around the water. You can see that they really splay their toes out.
Yeah, and she's using her feet very much like paddles, isn't she?
Yeah. But generally the Labradors, the flat-coat Retrievers, the Golden Retrievers, the Spaniels, they all love water.
Particularly this one. Do you want to go in again? Here you are, Treat. Ready? Go!
Unlike cats, most dogs love water. And we've selectively bred some dogs to be strong swimmers to help us retrieve game from water. But breeds with squat bodies or long backs often find it difficult to swim.
But there's one breed that's a particularly accomplished swimmer, and it's not the first one that would come to mind.
I've come to Surrey to meet one of the hardest working breeds in history. A strong swimmer, prized for its hunting ability and killer instinct. the poodle.
This one's called Breeze, and isn't he lovely? All dressed up for a party. How long has this taken you, Anita?
3 to 4 hours.
And he'll stand for that length of time?
Well, with wine and coffee breaks, yes.
But you don't get the coffee, do you? No.
They're done from the time they're 3 or 4 weeks of age. They get used to it.
And what's the most difficult part about doing it?
I think getting both sides to match.
The poodle is often best known for its distinctive style. But this breed's first role made an even bigger splash. The poodle was originally a hunting dog, bred to retrieve waterfowl and other game from rivers. And that has shaped the classic poodle hairstyle.
This is a really practical cut as well as a decorative one. It's designed to help the dog work. It's also a cut with a very long history. Roman coins from 100 BC show an image of a dog that also has a similar pattern in its fur. It's very, very leanly haired, or perhaps even shaven at the back, with a really big, rough mane at the front of the dog. Later on in history, in the 16th and 17th century, we find fantastic woodcuts and printed descriptions of water dogs. And they describe why they're cut like this. The big mane here is for keeping the vital organs warm when the dog is retrieving in the water. Even the top knot here, the ribbon, had a practical purpose. That was to allow the hunters to differentiate between different dogs in the water. So what do you think, Breeze? Duck hunting, you and me, down the muddy river? Yeah? Look at the look you're giving me. Mind you, if I'd spent that long in the hairdressers, I don't think I'd have been that keen either.
And dogs that love swimming also love to shake. But there's more to that doggy shake than meets the eye, as Steve is finding out. Go on, in you go.
Just your toes. Just your toes.
Surprisingly, not all dogs shake in the same way. As we hope to see if we can persuade enough wet dogs to shake in front of our slow-motion camera.
Keep shaking off as fast as I can put it on. Good boy. Oh, not just yet, Poppy. We need you to starring role. Get ready. Yeah, just go up this way. Oh, I'm sorry. I know. Shake it out. Shake it out. Give it some beans. Well done. Don't fight it. You know what you want to do. Very dainty. Very dainty, Stanley.
We can play back the footage 8 times slower, allowing us to see the shake in all its glory.
Oh, very nice. It really always starts with the head, and they throw those ears, then it transfers down the back, all the way along the spine and onto the bum, and finally the tail, which is really reliant on the very mobile skin flicking from side to side, and that's what gives the fur the momentum to really fling that water away. Right, we need to start timing some of these now and just seeing how fast they're moving.
The slow-mo camera reveals that the smaller the dog, the faster the shake. They need to get dry to avoid hypothermia.